Welcome back to another lesson on Windows PowerShell. In our previous tutorials, we covered variables, arrays, array list, and hash tables. Today, I will go over how to create custom objects. Custom objects allow us to create structured data. And those of you who doesn't know what is structured data, it is basically when data is structured into a standard format and has well-defined structure, complies to a data model, follows a persistent order, and it is therefore easily accessible by your script. In other words, your data has a specific structure that can be used by your script. Objects in PowerShell contains structured data. In fact, there are built-in objects in PowerShell that has the structured data already in it. I'm going to quickly paste something in here because you don't need to know this. This is something that we have already built into or baked into PowerShell. I just want to show you that PowerShell already has objects built into the program itself. So if I run this, for example, it will give me all the programs that is currently running. So right here it says running, and that allow us to have that data displayed or accessed by your script. So objects are already built into your PowerShell module. However, we can also do custom objects like the one that are built in here in PowerShell. So that's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to clear the screen here. I just want to show you that the objects, built-in objects, do exist. Now, there is a built-in PowerShell class you can use to create your custom objects. This class is available since PowerShell version 3, and we can utilize that to our advantage because now it is built in or baked in there. We can use that to convert things like hash tables into custom objects. So the built-in PowerShell class that we can use to create custom objects is called the PSCustomObject class, which allow us to create our own objects, and this can then be used with the hash tables. So remember from our previous tutorial, recall how we can create hash tables. We start with a $sign, and then we're gonna put whatever the name you want to have for your hash table. I'm gonna call it my object for now. So it is not an object yet, but I will call it my object. I'm gonna put equal sign, and I'm gonna put @ symbol, and we're gonna start and open and close curly brackets. I'm gonna put few key value pairs. Remember, all hash tables have key value pairs. So let's start with name. So why not I go with my name? So I'm going to put Sanuja, and let's say language, and let's call the language as English, and let's put another key value pair, I mean. So the province, and I'll call the province Ontario. Okay. So this is basically a hash table. Recall from our previous lessons, this is how you create a hash table. You have the @ symbol after the equal sign, you have the curly brackets, and you have key value pairs. If I actually call in our my object with .getType, and if I run this, it will return as a hash table. As you can see here, right here, it is a hash table. Now, we want to convert this hash table into a custom object. To do that, what we can do is we can enter PSCustomObject class right after this equal sign. So right after this equal sign, we can enter the PSCustomObject class. What that's going to do, it's going to take this hash table and convert that into a custom object called my object. So the hash table my object will now be a custom object instead of a hash table. So again, if I'm going to run this again so that I have that on my terminal actually. So this is showing as hash table true, but now we're going to use that PSCustomObject class to convert this. To do that, right after the equal sign, you can start with the square bracket and you can enter PSCustomObject. Oh, you don't need the whole thing. Just need a PSCustomObject, just like that. And then after that, you can have the @ and the rest of the code like that. So if it just confuses you, what I basically did is this, without this part, if I get rid of this, this will return as a hash table. So again, if I run this, this will return as a hash table. But as soon as I put this square bracket and put PSCustomObject, this now will be converted into a custom object instead of a hash table. So if I run this again, it returns as a PSCustomObject instead of a hash table. So again, in the Windows PowerShell, it is not case sensitive. I usually do type something like this, PSCustomObject, but you don't need to do that. It is not case sensitive. As long as right after this equal sign, you have the square brackets and inside there you have type PSCustomObject, it will call in that class and it will convert this hash table into a custom object. Now, there may be a situation where you have a hash table at the top of your script and you don't want to convert that into a custom object at the very beginning, or you are accessing a hash table from a script outside of the current script you are writing and you want to convert your hash table into a custom object later in your script. In other words, you don't want to change it in the original hash table up here, you want to change it down somewhere in your script. You can still do that. To do that, what you need to do is, originally you can create a hash table just like that, and again, if I clear the screen down here and if I run this, it will return back as a hash table. However, after using this hash table, now you want to convert this into a something else, which is the calling the PSCustomObject class. You can do that. To do that, you can go again my object equal, and we can start with the square bracket and close square bracket and PSCustomObject. I'm just going to type custom object, and right after that I can call in my object, and what this is going to do, at the beginning of your script it will keep your hash table as a hash table, but after this line of code or this line of script, it will change your hash table into a a custom object. So if I run this right now, for example, I'm going to clear the screen. So if I run the whole thing, at this point it is a hash table. Now then we convert it into a custom object. Now this is a custom object. So you can do that, and also you don't need to use the same name or variable name or whatever, the object name. So for example, I can call this, instead of my object, I can call this my hash table, and then I can call I can change this now to my hash table, and then I can call this my hash table, and now the variable name for my object is my object. Variable name for my hash table, my hash table name is my hash table, and this will be still valid. If I run this now, it'll still be valid, and it'll be returning hash table at this point and custom object at that point, because we convert your hash table into custom objects. Again, there are situations when you are doing advanced or intermediate scripting where you want to have a hash table at the very beginning of your script, or partway down you're gonna change it into a custom object, and this is how you can do it. Or you're accessing that particular hash table from a outside script. So for now, I'm gonna change this to what I originally had, which is the most efficient way of doing it. I'm gonna use this PSCustomObject way up here after the equal sign, and I'm going to change this back into my object, the name of it, because it will be easier for us to follow. So I'm going to delete all of that, and I'm going to clear the screen. So now you learn two methods of converting your hash table into custom objects. Next thing, I'm going to show you how you can add or remove properties into this custom object up here. So in other words, this custom object, which is basically a hash table converted into a custom object, has name property associated with Manuja, language property associated with English, province property associated with Ontario. In other words, like key value pairs in hash tables, we have a key and a value, key and a value. But I want to add something new to here. So my custom object has already been created up here, but I want to add a new member or a new item into these properties. So adding properties, in other words, allow you to expand this custom object with more new properties that you can enter into it while your script is running. So to do that, what I need to do is first I need to call in my object. So I'm going to start with $ my object, and then I'm going to use the pipe command. And again, I will explain how pipe command works. Pipe command is basically this symbol you saw, which is a straight up and down arrow, line. And for now, just know it's a pipe command. In my future tutorial, I will explain exactly how you can use pipe command for various different activities, as well as what is a pipe command. Pipe is basically taking an information from one thing and putting it into another thing. You can look it that way, but for now, just know this is a pipe command. So I do my object, that's my object name. I'm going to put my pipe command, and I'm going to put, or character, I'm going to put add dash member. That's a commandlet, and I'm going to put space, and I'm going to put a dash type member type. So this is a switch. So remember, in my previous tutorial, I mentioned when you have a dash at the front of a certain item, it is a switch when you are writing in this way the script. And after the switch, I'm going to put not property, and which is a built-in thing in PowerShell, space dash name, and I'm going to put a space, and in here I'm going to put country, UNTRI, and I'm going to put space dash value, and I'm going to give it a value, let's say Canada. So what this is going to do, it's going to take this custom object and it's going to add a new line in addition to name, language, province, and that line will include a the name here would be the country, and the value would be Canada. So in hash tables, we call this value key value pairs. In custom objects, we call this the name value pairs. This is a name, this is a name, this is a name, and this is a value. I mean, yeah, maybe I should change this to first name, so that would be first name. Okay, let's call this first name. So that way you don't get confused with this name, because this name is a built-in name in our Windows PowerShell. This is just a name that I created called first name. So again, just to make sure you're not confused, this first name, or the previously I had just name here, is something that I created. This is something that already built into Windows PowerShell that allow you to add a name value pair into your custom object. Just like key value pairs in hash tables, we are adding name value pairs into custom objects. So it just happened to have that name here and the name here previously, so I just changed it into first name. So now if I run this and if I print my object, you will notice that it is going to include the country with the value Canada. So if I run this, actually I don't need to do that, I can run the whole code. It includes Sanuja, so Sanuja, which is the first name, language English, and province Ontario, and the country Canada. So now this new thing has been added up here. To prove that it was added at the line number 6, you can actually print the table at the top, and it will have a missing value, missing item here. So if I run this now, if we didn't run this part of the line earlier, the first time when you print it, it will be missing this particular add member value. So for example, right now it has first name, language, province, and it just has Sanuja, English, Ontario. But if when you print it the next time, I don't know why I didn't print the last time with the second time, asking for it, but let's do that. It printed with Canada, name value pair. So if you want to add another line, it's the same thing. You can copy another, name value pair. You can do the same thing. You call in your my object. You can call the name, let's say tel, because I want the telephone number. And instead of this time we will do a number. So say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That will be their phone number, I guess. And then if you run this now, it's gonna have Sanuja, English, Ontario, and it's gonna have phone number. And you will also notice, because the terminal have so much space this way, the table most likely gonna show up in a vertical way, because there are way too many the name value pairs. So if I run the whole code now, there you go, it's actually printed the table in a vertical way. So it has a first name Sanuja, language English, province Ontario, country Canada, and telephone number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So it added the two there, right, like that way. There's another way you can actually add a member here without using the pipe command method, even though I love using this method because it's much easier in my head. The other way to do it is basically go add member, and you can put a switch input object, and then you can put the $sign and call in your function. So it will be the my object, not the function, I mean your custom object. So this is your custom object, my object we created here, we're calling in right here. And then we can put dash member type, and then we're going to put here node property, just like before up here, node property, and dash name, and let's call this city, and then space, and again you need to give a value for that to have any value. So I'm going to call this Toronto, so Toronto. And now if I run this again, you will notice it now has their city added down here. So you can actually use either this method of adding to your custom object, or you can use this method of adding to your custom object. Either or would work, and the difference between the two is minimal. You don't need to worry about much about the hit to the programs that running, like in terms of resource usage. there is no big difference between this method and this method. So you can use either method to do that, and you can have numeric values or you can have a string values like this when you're adding the name value pairs to your custom object. Now, what if I want to remove a key value pair from this custom object? You can do that. For removal of a key value pair, again, you're going to call in your object, which is my object. So right here, I'm typing my object, and then I'm going to put .PSObject dot sorry, one moment, PS object dot we're gonna type properties and then dot remove. So that's a remove function now, and let's say I want to remove language, so LANGUAGE and close it. So what this is going to do, it's going to remove this language part, the name value part, name value item from your custom object at here. So if I call it in down here, and if I clear the screen, okay, and now if I run the whole script, it got rid of the language that originally that was in my custom object. Remember, we had right up here, you can see that we have language equal to English, but it's not appearing down here. Again, you can remove object this way, remove the name value pairs this way on your custom object, even if it is added using something like this later. So that is something that you can use in your advanced and intermediate PowerShell scripts. So I'm going to clear the terminal again down here. And the next thing we are going to talk about is how you can access data contained within your custom object that you have created up here. So I'm going to delete this part because otherwise it's going to be messy up here. So I'm just going to delete this one. I will just leave this one. That's okay. Just going to have a little bit more extra items to look at, I guess. So this is how you add them. Now I'm going to look at how you can access your data, right? So let's say you want to get a all the data within a custom object. You can simply go with typing in your object. So my object, this should be object right here. No, that's correct. Yeah, this so my object, and that will basically gonna print that. So if you have this is something else, you call it something else here, you're just gonna call that in, and you saw that when you run it, it's just going to print all your the items or key value pairs contained within that custom object. Another way of doing this is using the get member commandlet. So you can put get dash member space dash input object, and in here I'm going to call it my object, and if I run this, I don't need to highlight again, I just can run the whole code. It'll print everything containing within this custom object, and notice it's not only have the first name, language, etc, city, country, etc right down here. It also have a bunch of other stuff, whether it's a string, boolean value, etc on the top showing up here as well, some few extra items. But what we are actually interested in this part, and also notice they're not actually really ordered, because remember, hash tables are like by default is not ordered in any ways. So it doesn't matter that I have enter city way down here, it might shows up at the very top like that. But that is something that I have mentioned in the previous tutorials, and you can see this is how you can get those information printed. Now there are a lot of other complex method of accessing data or information contained within a custom object. For now, just remember you can access all your information either using this or by simply calling in the custom object itself. Either or will result in printing your custom object name value pairs. So either you can print it this way using this method, or you can print it this way using this method. Again, we can use for loops, while loops. There are different ways of accessing different types of data information contained within it. For now, I'm not going to cover that at all, because we will do that sometimes later. So now, why would you want to convert your hash table to a custom object, right? So at the very beginning, we had a hash table and we converted it into a custom object. And then we start adding items to it, just like a hash table, but we're using different types of code. And you may ask, like, why do we actually want to, create a hash table and then convert it into a custom object? What's the point, right? Again, I previously, at the very beginning of the video, I mentioned a little bit about why we do that, but to give you a little bit of more in depth to, why we do this, is because custom objects are a very powerful feature of PowerShell, and you can leverage that to make your functions or commands even more suitable in some advanced intermediate scripts. In other words, like, it is an easy way to create structured data, specifically when working with large sets of data. Like if you have thousands of data key value pairs, it is much easier to deal with custom objects than just dealing with a hash table. For example, if you try to export hash table data to a .csv file, in other words Excel file, or a SQL database, you will need to add more lines of code to make the script work. However, using custom object method or custom object class, you would be able to reduce some unnecessary lines of code from your script, and therefore it allows you to have more efficient code using custom objects as opposed to using hash tables. Also, remember that there are commandlets baked into our Windows PowerShell, and those commandlets sometimes cannot work with hash tables, but they can certainly work with custom objects. So you will need to convert your hash tables into custom objects at that point if you want to interact or use those built-in commandlets that use object methodology for accessing and interacting with data. So that's why if somebody asks you, or you're writing an exam, and if your professor asks, why would you even want to convert a hash table into a PSCustomObject type, custom object, this is why we do it. Hash tables use also less resources compared to PSCustomObject, but the difference is basically minor in my opinion. So even though the hash table use less resources when running the script compared to a PSCustomObject method or class, at the end of the day, it's very, very minor in my opinion, even with large data sets. However, the older method of creating custom object do use a little bit of more system resources than the way this method that I have shown here. So what is the older method, right? So remember, the PSCustomObject class was introduced after PowerShell version 3. I mentioned that at the very beginning of this tutorial. Prior to the version 3, we can use the PSCustomObject. So you may come across older script, still valid, maybe running on your organization, that contain custom objects but are not using this PSCustomObject class to create or generate those custom objects. So how do you do that, right? So when you don't have this PSCustomObject class, if you look at our original hash table, which we converted into a custom object using the PSCustomObject class, you can actually call in that my object up here, and instead of doing this PSCustomObject right here, you can use another method, an older way of calling in that information and converting that into an custom object, which is basically called the new object commandlet. So we can actually put equal sign here and use the new dash object commandlet, and from here we can then say dash type name, and we can call in PSObject. So it's not PSCustomObject, it's just PSObject, and then dash property, and then space, I will go my object. And what this basically did, actually take this hash table and convert into a custom object, but using the new object commandlet. So it did not use the PSCustomObject class that came after PowerShell 3. This is using an older way of converting. It takes a little bit of, it takes way more memory, actually a little bit more memory and resources to do this, but it still will convert into a custom object. So if I actually, I'm gonna turn this into a basically text notes in here. So these are not codes anymore, these are just notes. I'm just gonna run this, and if so it's only gonna run this part of the code. Oops, sorry, it's gonna only run this part of the code, and this part of the code, this is gonna get ignored. And if I type my object here, dot get type, and if I do the same thing, my object dot get type, initially it's going to be a hash table, and it then going to be converted into a custom object. So if I run this now, it was initially a hash table again, just like previously, but now using the new dash object commandlet, we have converted that into a PSCustomObject. So prior to PowerShell 3, this is how you would convert some, a hash table or any hash table into a custom object. So it takes more resources than the previous methods I showed you, previous ways of doing it, in the beginning of the tutorial. But this is another option that you might see on the older script. So it took the hash table, it was hash table at this point, and then the next time it's the code runs, this is already done, and so it converted into a custom object. You can also create a custom object with values in it by using the new object commandlet right here, instead of converting a hash table from up here. To do that, I'm just going to clear the screen, and I will show you how to do that by just getting rid of this part. I guess we don't need all of that. So instead of converting this into a custom object using this method, let's create a new custom object down here. So to do that, what I will do is selecting any variable name. So any name that I want to call this my custom object, I'm going to call it student list, and then I will do equal sign because that's our operator, and we're going to use a new object because this is the old method. The new object is a commandlet that you can use, and I'm going to put dash type name, and in here we can go PS object. So I'll type it again, PS object, so it's easy to read. And what this will do is take student list, create that, and that's going to be a custom object. So if I type here dot $sign student list dot get type, this will return, if I just run these two lines of code, it will return a custom object. So you can actually create a custom object using the student, using the new object commandlet. So that's an older valid method, still valid in PowerShell 7, even though this is from PowerShell 3 and down. You can use that to create a custom object. You can also use this new custom object that you have created using the new object method or commandlet you can use that to and then add to the key value pairs, actually the name value pairs, right? To do that, what we need to do is basically we can use the add member commandlet. So if I want to add it to this, what we can do is we can go add dash member. So remember previously I had some comments up here, commented items with add member, and I'm going to go switch input object. So it's the same thing, but we calling in the student list now, and in the student list I'm going to do member type, and then you can say node property, and I'm gonna say name because let's say I want the similar way as the above, so I'm gonna say first name, switch is name. So this is the switch. Sorry about that. Again, don't get confused with the key value or the type value pairs. So this is the name. So name going to be let's call this first name, and then value we can say whatever you like. So let's say I'm going to call it Manuja, and then we can add another one using the same thing. I'm simply going to copy this and paste it, but this time the name going to be let's say student ID. So student ID, and I can call this one student ID 1245. Doesn't really matter, it's just a random number, so it could be either a string or a number, it doesn't really matter. Let's add another one. So let's say I want language, language, and let's say the language is Sinhala. And if I run this, and then if I print the student list, it will print all of these items that I have added onto my custom object that we created right here. So I only need to run this part of the code. So this is, you can ignore this, but I will actually move so you don't get confused. So if I only run this part of the code now, what that's going to do, it's going to create the student list custom object right here. It's empty at that point, but after we use add member commandlet to add items in here, it will have all of these showing up. So if I run that part of the code, right here we have the first name Manuja, student ID 12345, and the language as Sinhala. I misspelled that, it should be language, language. So it doesn't really matter, it's just a string. Notice that this is a value, that is a numeric value. It's showing up on your Visual Studio Code with PowerShell addition with the green, but you can actually have this as a string as well. If you want this as a string, you put those thing and it'll still run, but it's no longer going to be a numeric value, it's going to be a string 12345. So that's how you can actually create a custom object using the old method of new object commandlet method. Both are still valid, but new object actually been used prior to PowerShell 3. After the PowerShell 3, we have been using that PSCustomObject. PSCustomObject method of doing it instead of doing the other way around, instead of doing this method. So today we learn that custom objects and hash tables are closely related to each other. In our scripts, we oftentimes create hash tables and convert them into custom objects, but there are certain situations you may create custom objects right from the get-go at the very beginning. So as we progress through this lecture series, we will create intermediate and advanced scripts that utilize custom objects, so you will see exactly why this is important. Don't forget to watch my previous lectures on PowerShell on my channel. That's everything for today, for now, and if you learned something new today, please make sure to thumbs up this video and subscribe to my channel. And until next time, thank you so much and have a nice day.